Anyway, speaking of not moving, I sat down and watched the next match, and I don't know. I want to love all of this, but they took the joy out of it. It was Damian Priest against Edge, Beth Phoenix at ringside for Edge in Toronto, his hometown. And again, if they only hadn't broken this group up, Edge was the key to it. I think that Priest and Ripley would be better off, and
it probably wouldn't have happened if Triple H was in charge, because remember, the story was that Edge wanted out because Vince wanted supernatural elements.
Yeah, and then they end up not doing a supernatural.
We haven't seen any of it.
Too late. They pulled the trigger on turning on Edge. But at least, okay, now Edge can get in the ring and teach these guys something by working with them. Okay, I'll look at it that way. I do think I liked Edge better with the long hair. He looks now more like a camp counselor than a superstar. But these guys, they took their time and they worked. They established Damian Priest as a heel. They got the people into it. Edge is a hometown hero anyway. And they had a good match. They went through a break, but actually went through, I think, 2 breaks. Yes, because at one point, Edge made a comeback on Priest, did the big jump, not a dive, but a jump onto Priest from the top to the floor. And then Priest gave Edge the razor's edge through the announce desk. And that was a break spot. And I'm like, God damn it. But even still, I understand it's the modern day. So as the guy gets razor's edged through the announce desk and they go to a 3.5-minute commercial. And when they come back, Edge is giving the guy that just got razor's edge through the announce desk is giving his opponent a Hurricane Run off the top rope. But they were still, again, they were working some false finishes and some 2 counts. And the people were with this. And finally, Edge goes for the sharpshooter or whatever the case. Priest kicks him off into the referee. The referee goes to the floor. Priest hits a side slam and gets 2 chairs and goes for this concerto thing, which, again, we've talked about. This may be Edge's cross to bear. Mick Foley has to live with the fact that he inspired countless garbage wrestlers to do deathmatch shit without recognizing his talent. Edge, for a great worker and a great talker and a great talent, has to bear the burden for popularizing this fucking phony, ridiculous concerto bullshit that could never actually be made to look like it's in any way real. But it doesn't matter because Priest missed the concerto. And Edge kicks the metal rod off of the chair support, the strut or whatever, cross faces Priest with it in his mouth, and then lets go and goes for a spear. But Priest had picked up the metal rod, and as Edge is running, hits him in the head with the fucking metal rod. And the referee rolls back in, cover, 1, 2, kick out. After being hit with a metal rod over his head, in seconds, Edge kicks out and then gets back up and hits a Canadian destroyer, which then Priest doesn't sell. He pops up to his feet so that Edge can spear him. 1, 2, 3. So even the Hall of Famer that I thought would be able to teach guys, certainly was there no producer there to go, Edge, you realize that he's hitting you in the head with a metal chair rod, and 10 seconds later, you're flying over the top of him to execute a Canadian destroyer. But I guess it's modern wrestling. So 1, 2, 3, and then Edge gets 2 chairs and goes for a concerto, but Rhea Ripley comes in and nuts him. And Balor comes in and gives the double stomp, and then the best part of the whole thing, Beth came in with a chair and stood the heels off all by her lonesome. And she was standing by her man. But it was disappointing to me because it was a good match between guys I like, and then they have to do in every match. You can't just even have a good match now where somebody gets over and somebody learns something in the ring and the fans enjoy it. They have to do chairs and rods and gimmicks, and And it didn't make sense at the end. And I wanted better from a guy like Edge. But maybe they just told him what to do, and he said, fuck it, I'm not going to argue anymore because that horse has left the barn. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know what Edge wants. He came back, and there was some promise early on. He was misused, the Randy Orton stuff. Judgment Day seemed promising. You were kind of starting to get me pumped into it, and then everything happened that happened. Beth was just there for, I think, WrestleMania. And she's still good. I got no problem with them using Beth. But I don't know what they're doing. And I agree with you about Finn Balor with Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. Even if you weren't going to use Edge, there had to be someone with more of a presence than Finn Balor. Even if you like his matches, even if you're someone who likes his promos, you can't tell me he was the guy that was a good fit for this.
They all of them, the office, the writers, the producers, the television crew, the wrestlers, everybody seems like these days they want to consider themselves television and actors and entertainers and show business, but they only adopt the things from those worlds that is fun to them, or that they don't. Okay, if you're casting a movie or a television series, big money involved, you can get anybody you want. Right? It's not like it's a local independent production. You got to use your cousin Ned. You can get the stars. You can get the names. The casting process in most movies, television, entertainment is arduous and is very important, not only for the success of the project, but also for the success of getting the funding or keeping the funding if you've already got it, because of who you get to play such and such part. They put no thought. Nobody puts any thought in wrestling anymore. Does this guy fit this part? Does this guy fit this suit? Does this guy look like he should be there? Or are we just doing this with this guy because he's hanging around and we like him and we ain't got no more ideas for him? Or this is the best we can do. If you ever say about a gimmick that you're about to introduce and the people in it, well, that's the best we can do, just save the fucking gimmick. Just save the gimmick. Anyway, that was Raw this week. Oh, great one. They're trying. I see they're bringing back surprise names. And unfortunately, as I've said, there's just not that many top-level surprise names to bring back. But at least they can reinvigorate their image with the fans they've pissed off about what they've done to NXT and some of their favorites over the last year. They can bring those guys back, and they can bring back a Trish Stratus or whatever, and they can put some entertainingly impromptu, parts into the program, followed by a 35-minute fucking girl segment or whatever. But it's not as easy as the Attitude Era. As I said, and I'll say again, they don't have the level of talent up and down across the board they did 25 years ago. People have seen all of this shit over and over, perpetrated by basically people that look like they have the durability and the physical frame of children, and everybody withstands it. They've been numbed and immune to angles. They've been told that everything's fucking phony and everybody's following a script and everything's predetermined. Their own biography and retrospective authorized programs on the A&E network have the biggest stars that actually drew real money and registered real ratings, talking about how they made all the shit up and cooperated in doing it. And so the people can now see, well, here's lesser talent doing shit that we now know is completely phony, and they're trying to get us to buy it. So it ain't gonna be that easy, and it ain't gonna be quick. And I don't know that they can do it unless they figure out a way to change the entire method that the wrestling is presented by the television program, by the company, and is accepted and viewed by the audience, and in a lot of cases is performed by the talent involved. Because the same shit they've been doing, just more hecticness and more chaos with the same people in front of the same fans. We don't have Austin and Rock and Mike Tyson and all this other stuff coming around and the ability to see these things on national TV for the very first time. We don't have any of that left anymore. So they got to do what they're going to do.
Part of the problem, too, is when Raw debuted in 93, obviously, looked nothing like anything else WWE had ever done. It was kind of the antithesis of what Vince McMahon envisioned wrestling to be, a small, tiny building with Memphis-style booking. At least as it would apply to WWE.
In their mind.
In their minds. Yeah, just quick, hot matches with main eventers against each other, angles, all these things happening. But it was a different look.
And it was 1 hour long.
By the time you got to 95, the show looked stale. It wasn't in the Manhattan Center anymore, and just show felt different. And that's one of the things that benefited the Attitude Era. A lot of the bad shit got by for the time because the whole show felt different. Raw was evolving. The look was changing. It felt current. It felt of the time. Not to say that time was great or anything, but it felt of the time.
Oh, well, we've gone back and looked at those 90s retrospectives. It's like, what the fuck were we thinking?
But it was fresh. That's the thing.
I'm not even talking about the wrestling business. I'm talking about people alive in the 90s. What the fuck were all of us thinking? 90s fucking sucked, and everybody proved themselves to be a blithering simpleton.
But if you watch...
But yes, but it was fresh.
But if you watch Raw today, does it feel any different than it did, by and large, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? The look of the show, the production of the show. Other than now, they just shake the cameras nonstop. Other than that shit.
and it takes 10 minutes for the guys to get to the ring before they have their match.
Yeah, it feels staler. The promos are staler. People don't connect the same way. And the show just needs some kind of real refresh. And it doesn't mean just, hey, let's get a brand new giant screen, because that doesn't really solve anything. Makes you feel better, and you could try to justify it. But the other problem is, and this is what I think they're trying to slowly change, and we'll see if they can effectively do it over the long term, Raw has been a stale and stagnant show for years. For years. When Steve Austin and The Rock took off, it had been stale for a couple of years. It's been stale for a long time now. I'm not going to say nothing could ever change, because I didn't think a Steve Austin and a Rock was going to come around in 95. Yeah. I thought it was going to keep going down. So you never know what'll happen, but the show itself has to feel more alive. That was one of the things that AEW had over WWE for a long time, was their show felt fresh and you didn't know what was going to happen, and it didn't feel like the same wrestling show, for good or for bad. But Raw feels the same each and every week, no matter when you watch it.
Well, and now, as we'll talk about in a second, I think AEW doesn't feel like the same show as Raw. It just feels like the same show they do every fucking week, except when they do something really insane, like they did this past week. But before we get into all of that and all the strife and turmoil in AEW, what is the strife and turmoil consisting of over at the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week?
Thankfully, the one place where there's no strife and turmoil right now, the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast, or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes. Of course, check out all of our shows, but this week, Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, his guest, Kevin Sullivan. Check that out today at suawpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian R. Solomon wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Also, once again, want to remind everyone, subscribe to The Wrestling News, Arcadian Vanguard's The Wrestling News. It will be debuting very soon, very, very soon, so you want to subscribe right now, and thank you to everyone who already has. A brand new concept, a brand new look at wrestling, a serious look at wrestling. If you want wrestling news delivered to you every day without any of the opinion or childishness that's constantly out there, subscribe today. No paywall, no clickbait, just The Wrestling News. Look for The Wrestling News wherever you find your favorite podcast, or download directly from thewrestlingnews.com. A lot more to come very soon. We'll talk about it next week on the show. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Go through the archive today at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. the mothership. Hey,
All right.
Hey, can I just say you played that sound, that spring sound, and actually that made me think of a rubber band, and after our talk about the Midnight Special, I started watching clips. Man, Felipe Wynn from the Spinners. What a fucking star. Come on. What a look, what a voice, what a command of the stage. The rubber band man.
When he saw that short, fat man with a band between his toes.
And of course, they kicked him out of the group, or he left the group because he wanted it to be changed to Felipe Wynn and the Spinners, and they said no, and both parties lost out. They should have. It would have propelled both of them further, but I don't know what we transitioned to from this.
And I was about to say, instead, they told him to get spun. Well, speaking of telling people to get spun.